we make home smarter to help you throughout the day.
Well, welcome everybody. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Glad you all could join us tonight. I'm Margot Bowerman. I'm a member of our state STEM team, and I have two other folks with us here today, and I'll have them introduce themselves. So Kelly, I see you're unmuted. I'll have you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Stry, and I'm a 4-H extension educator in Wright County, and I have been working with Engineering and Design Challenge for about 10 years. And I'll pass it to Becky.
Hello, everyone. Becky Meyer. I'm in Northeast Minnesota. I'm an extension educator regionally, and I've been working with the STEM team since I've been here and with the challenge since it began. So it's great to have you all with us.
Thank you, Becky. And I'll say I'm up in Crookston. So I'm up in Northwest Minnesota. And what we're curious about is where you all are joining us from tonight. So if you use the annotate feature on your screen, it's usually like a little pencil, so you might have to hover to find it. And if you can't find it, it's not a big deal. Just feel free to unmute and share. But if you would annotate, use your annotate and put some type of mark of where you're located. A stamp, or there we go. Thank you, Mike.
You can also put it in the chat too, if you'd like.
Thank you, Kelly. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Welcome. Yeah, we've got some good representation across the state. Rice County. Thank you, Joanne. It's always fun to see where everybody's from and just see that. Of course, we could talk about the weather here in Minnesota, but I think we'll skip that and get right to the engineering. Clear all that. And we will get started into the meat of our presentation as soon as I get back to there we go. So what we're here today to talk about is the Engineering Design Challenge, and we're glad you're all here to share with us and learn from each other. And in truth, we've been doing this for 10 years, and we'll talk about that. But every year we learn something new, and often and many times it's from our coaches as well as our participants. So what we'll talk about today is we will go over the basics of the Engineering Design Challenge, and that'll include things like how to get started, some of the resources we have. We'll talk about the engineering design process, which is key to this program. We will talk about how your team can use team journals and presentations. We'll also talk about the showcase opportunities and events that we have available for teams, as well as other types of support for teams. And we will definitely leave time for questions. So this is your meeting to share with each other, as well as ask questions of us. So again, the basics of our engineering design challenges, we're creating a Rube Goldberg influenced machine, and it's got to have at least 10 steps. And in our materials, and we can certainly talk about it tonight, we'll talk about what it means to be a step. And for those of you that have been with us, you've probably heard us say this before, but we don't call it a Rube Goldberg machine because Rube Goldberg is actually a trademark name. And so we call it an engineering design challenge. And what was kind of neat last year at our engineering design challenge is we had Rube Goldberg's son come, and he's the guy in the middle here with this team here. And that was kind of neat to have him there and have him really support our program and see what it was about. So we enjoyed having him there. So it is basically a Rube Goldberg influenced machine, although we won't call it that. The other key to our Rube Goldberg challenge is you have to have 10 steps, and 2 of those steps we will ask that you complete a specific task or a challenge. So we'll go over that today, what the 2-step task is for this year's challenge. And it's around a theme, and we'll also go over our theme this year, although you've probably seen it's our 10-year anniversary, so we're excited about that, and our theme is related to that. Our teams can be made of, and we'll go over teams in a little bit too, our teams can be made of 3 to 10 youth. If you've worked with teams before, you know that once you get to 10, it's quite a bit of management, but there's lots of ideas and energy. So having up to 10 is not something we'd want to go past. And then we've also learned, this is a team-based challenge. And what we've learned is really it's those 3rd grade and up. So 3rd grade through their end of their 4-H career is what what our event is available to. And as we're talking, if you have questions that pop up, we may be covering them later, but may not. So please quick questions in the chat and we'll make sure that we get to them, or feel free to unmute. The other thing that we, it's an engineering challenge, but we're really proud of that we see teams always come away with, and it's often because coaches have done a really nice job of building that teamwork environment and also creating good learning environments for young people. So the things that we see come out of young people that participate in a Rube Goldberg challenge are a variety of what are referred to now as 21st century skills. And there's many skills that they get. These are some that we almost always see, and young people will comment in one way or another that these skills, they've developed these skills or improved in these skills through participation in the engineering design challenge. So there's different learning skills. And again, the ones that we've picked out or we really see in young people are critical thinking, that problem solving process that the engineering is really based on. They learn a lot about how to communicate with each other, as well as how to communicate with judges during their showcase experience. And certainly as a teamwork activity, there's a lot of collaboration, and young people will almost always in our evaluations talk about how they've improved in their understanding of teamwork. And then with Rube Goldberg, kind of the fun of it and the core of the fun is allowing young people to have creativity and express creativity. And then, of course, we see other life skills. And so a different type of skill that we see in Rube Goldberg, and that's life skills such as leadership and also followership. So that's kind of that teamwork. We need to have leaders, but we also need to learn to work as a team. They have a lot of flexibility. We've heard some young people say, my idea didn't get picked for the team, but I still was there for the team and made it go forward. So learning that type of flexibility in a teamwork environment. And then productivity, as if you've been through these before, you know that it's crunch time when you're trying to get it built. And so young people learning how to be productive with each other and stay focused is certainly a skill they gain. And then on top of that is a lot of different social skills that come out through that learning environment. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
All right, so some of you may have heard that this year is the 10th year of the Engineering Design Challenge. And if this is your first year, or maybe you've been with us for a number of years, you might remember some of our past challenges. When we first started Engineering Design Challenge, the challenge was a one-step task. The very first one is zip a zipper. And as we progressed through the years, it evolved to a two-step challenge. And you can see here listed are a few of our past engineering design challenges. The one saving energy with engineering is the one that we had most recently, but you might have another favorite on that list that you see there. Someone asked me one time, which one was my favorite? And I have several for different reasons. So depending on how long you've been with us, you may have a favorite as well. So, and Margo, if you want to go to the next slide there. So then you can see then we wanted to commemorate this anniversary of the 10 years a little bit with our challenge. So this year's theme is using engineering to achieve your goal. That's the overall theme of our challenge this year. And the two-step task is to take your best shot and celebrate. Some of you might, if you're new and you look at that challenge, you might think, well, that isn't very specific, but we keep it vague intentionally to allow for that creativity of the teams. And when they've creating their machine, many of you may think, oh, well, taking your best shot is a sports related theme. That isn't always the case. If you take a look at our guidebook, our coach's handbook, they will give you some examples that are not necessarily sports themed, and your young people might have other great ideas to use to solve that challenge as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that handbook in just a little bit. You go to the next one, Margo. All right, so getting started with the team. First of all, I'm just curious, how many of you, if you could unmute or just put it in the chat, are you our first year coach, or if you've been with us more than 1 year? Okay, Mike is a second year. Great, thank you. First year, Sarah, thank you. Okay, another first year. All right, Joanne, you're the most experienced one, I think. So you have a variety of folks. So as I'm talking about this slide, I might ask for some of our more experienced coaches to share their experiences as well, working with the team. The first thing that you need to do is to get started is to have 2 screen volunteers, 4-H volunteers. So if you have not completed that volunteer screening process in your county, you need to complete that process as soon as possible. It's a 3-step process where you fill out an application, do a background check, and then you do a short online orientation. And once you're approved for that, we can get you going with registering your team and getting started. If you have any questions about that screening process, you can let us know tonight or get a hold of your local extension educator in the county that you live in or that you are working with your team in. The next thing is you need some kids to start working on the machine. There's a lot of different ways that people have youth members recruited to their team. The most common way is that they are all members of the same 4-H club, but that isn't always the case. We sometimes have kids from different 4-H clubs that come together. They've met through an engineering design challenge kickoff event or other ways. Maybe they've recruited their friends who aren't in 4-H yet to be part of that team. We also have some multi-county teams because we know that there's interest, but not always enough interest in each of the counties. So we encourage them to form their teams in other ways. And once the other thing is that youth all have to be enrolled in 4-H too to participate in EDC. So if they are friends of a 4-H member, we just need to make sure that we get them enrolled in 4-H online as well. When you start working on your machine and working with your team, you'll need a central meeting space. And that can look a lot of different ways depending on your situation. I know frequently people are using garages or barns or other outbuildings to build their machine. It's always good to find a space that you can set up the machine and leave it set up. Sometimes that is a little bit more challenging, but that way, if you're able to leave it set up, you don't have to worry so much about rebuilding it, taking it down, tweaking all those things if you work on it from time to time. Where are some other areas that people have worked on their machines for their meeting space? You can put that in the chat in case anybody needs an idea. I know one team I visited last summer in Carver County, they worked on a screened-in porch that was attached to the back of their house, which worked out really well for them. Mike said it sits in I can move my screen here, my shed all summer. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Sometimes this is the hardest part about EDC is finding a space, a dedicated space for that. My husband was a coach a number of years ago, and I lost both parking places in my garage all summer long because there was machines set up in there. So the sacrifices we make, right? The next thing is you'll need to just find a time that works for everybody to meet and start working on the machine, whether it's on a weekend or a weeknight. That's the conversation you could have with your team members and parents too about what works for them. We often get the question about, well, how much time or when should we start working on our machines? Some teams are working already. That doesn't mean if you haven't started, you're not behind. That's okay too. Many of our teams don't start working until school is out just due to time constraints. I think it's entirely up to you about how frequently that you meet. Oftentimes, though, it does take longer than anticipated in building your machine. So you might need to take a look at when is our showcase event. We do have the state event, which is on August 7th. So many times teams look at that as their benchmark as to when the machine has to be ready to go. In other counties, they have an opportunity to showcase their machine at a county fair or a county showcase of some sort. So maybe that's your benchmark for when you need to have that machine ready to go. Take a look at what your end date is and you can work backwards. Mike said tonight is our 4th meeting. We meet once a week for an hour and a half. Last year, we didn't start early enough and did 2 times a week the weeks before the showcase. So that's great advice, Mike. You know, it's hard to predict how quickly the teams will work. So thinking about that, you might need to add additional time as it gets closer, but maybe your team will be already working in or work very quickly and have their machine ready to go. Supplies, you know, we often joke about engineering design challenge supplies. All you need is a pile of junk, and that's really what what it is. Spending money is not encouraged for this event because we're wanting you to use things that you have access to already. Maybe it is Legos or Matchbox car tracks or things like that that can be repurposed for the purposes of your machine. Occasionally you do have to buy something for your machine, but we don't encourage a lot of spending money for that. It's fun to find those things around your home for the purposes of working on that machine. Kristen said we wait until June, but we should start earlier. I'm glad that you have learned that, Kristen. I think that's an important message for people too. As you are also getting started and working with your team, it's really important to start your team journal from the point that you begin. A team journal is basically a diary of the things that happen during each of the times you're meeting. It's also a good place for them to record their ideas for what's working, what's not working, kind of reflect back on their experience through each of those meetings. The team journal is also brought to the state showcase and evaluation of that document. We have lots of examples on our website and other places that we can show you examples of how you could do that. Anything else, coaches that have been around, any other advice for how to get started with our teams? All right, if not, I'm going to
maybe a question to put to coaches is, where have you found a sticking point as you've been getting started, or what's one piece of advice you wish you'd had?
As you're thinking about that, Mike said, we got our county 4-H rep to sign everyone up. Highly recommend. Mike, do you mean that they enrolled or they completed the registration process, or I guess I'm not quite sure.
We gave our, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, I can hear you.
We gave our county rep the 7 names and then 2 coaches' names, and she went through the process to sign everyone up and paid everyone's bill. So county pays for half, and then we actually got a corporate sponsorship this year to pay for the other half.
Oh wow!
But
what county are you? Mike, what county are you from?
Meeker.
Okay, great.
So instead of having 7 parents, well, I guess 2 of my kids are on the team, so having 5 parents come with you for questions on how they're having troubles signing up, we just had Kayla do it all for us.
Okay, so your support staff there. So
yep.
that may or not be something that your support staff or educator in your county will be able to do for you, but definitely inquire about that. I know that the point about payment, I know that in the past, Margot, do you want to maybe talk about that, about if they have a county that works with them in the billing of it?
Yeah, so we're flexible. So if you have questions, reach out and ask us. But there's a variety. Talk to your county 4-H educator about how people get paid. We have to live within the systems that we have, and sometimes our systems aren't all that friendly or easy to work with. So don't think it's you. Sometimes it's our system. So ask. But many times, if you reach out to your local educators, they do support teams to participate at state events. So be sure and reach out to your local educator. And if you have trouble finding or finding who your local educator is, we can certainly help you with that. But many times the Federation or Leaders Council, the governing body, does have support to get your team to the state event.
All right, with that, I'm going to pass the slides over to Becky.
All right, thank you. I'm just reading Kristen's comment here. Oh yeah, so that encouragement. Okay, that's a great a great brainstorming that I think we can do. So I'm going to just introduce these slides, and then I think we can talk about how do we get that engagement with the team as they're coming together. So we have 2 different levels for teams with engineering design. We started with level 1, which is basically focused on mechanical engineering and the 6 simple machines, and really helping kids to just get a basic understanding of what engineering design is and the process for engineering design. And this is really good for anyone who is new to the engineering design challenge, and also our younger youth members, which primarily has been 3rd through 8th grade, which is what we originally designed the program for. But it's not to say that you, if you have older, like 9th or 10th grader, level 1 may be a great starting point, especially if they haven't been engaged in the process before. And then for our level 2 teams, the reason that we had level 2 get started was we had, at the time with the level 1, we had older youth who were serving as mentors, or youth who were aging out of our level 1 program. And we wanted to be sure to keep them engaged because they were having such a great time with the Engineering Design Challenge. So we designed level 2, which includes 4 different types of engineering in their machine. So they have to, it's building off of the mechanical engineering and those 6 simple machines, but they also need to include a component that's related to chemical, electrical, and fluid power. And so it's just it's a more challenging, which is why it's not good for someone who is new to engineering design, and maybe not so good for our younger youth, but we can see this being more for experienced middle and older high school youth getting involved in level 2. And I think we can move to the next slide just around our resources real quick. So one of the things I was going to point out as well is that here's a short URL so you can find this page with these various resources, and we encourage you to go there and find them. And also, if you're looking for something that you think we should have that isn't there, to let us know. We're constantly trying to identify what are some of the additional supports that are needed. If you go to that page, you'll find the handbook, which walks through the challenge itself and some of the information that we've already shared around, 3 to 10 members of a team, that you need to have 2 coaches, that they need to be screened, some of that basic information. And then there's more information about the challenge itself. There's information in there about the judging that takes place during the state showcase. There's evaluation information and things like the rubric that we'll use during the showcase. There's more information in there on the journals that Kelly spoke to. There's more information specifically about the showcase event, and a whole bunch of other resources. I think there's some curriculum there that you can access. And now I want to go back to Kristen's comment about that younger youth and, 12 years old, and thinking about how do you get them to initially engage. So those are some things that I think that's a really good question. And so I think depending on your team membership, if they're youth who are already friends and have, sort of come together because of their shared interest and around something else, and they are doing this as an extended experience, like that's going to be a different dynamic than I've recruited 8 kids from the neighborhood who all are about the same age, but they may have seen each other at the playground, but they've never really interacted with one another before. So some of the things to think about is how to initially get the young people to have a comfort level with each other, and then thinking about some of those, whether it be icebreakers or some team building before you even get into brainstorming around ideas that they might have for the creation of their engineering design machine. Margot, would you like to share more?
I think you're hitting the nail on the head. My thought process, or what I was thinking in response to that, as well as additional comments that Kristen had, was to always start your meetings by setting up the teamwork aspect and helping the kids identify what they're calling teamwork. So as you're talking about those some kids that are super EDC oriented versus those kids that are social. Find the roles that meet them, because the social activity, the theme could maybe play into that and gives them a role. But I think for me, that is setting every meeting with a start of teamwork expectations is really helpful. And Mike certainly has some good advice in his comments as well.
Yeah, I was just going to note as well that in addition to like those roles, I mean, maybe that is something that you establish at that very first time that they're coming together is, what are the kind of the group norms, and thinking about what potential roles did they see. And I know that as Mike indicated, having those roles change from time to time is really important, because you may have someone who is strongly introverted and very quiet, but super, super excited about this engineering design challenge and wanting to engage in that construction of, processing different ideas and the different steps, but maybe not having like the initiative to sort of jump into that. So if you can think about the dynamics of those personalities and helping them to navigate through that, and a lot of that relationship and thinking, how can I get the quieter young people a part of this team to engage in a different way without pushing them, so far out of their comfort zone that they don't come back for the next meeting. So, I mean, there's certainly a balance. And as coaches, hopefully you'll have a good understanding of those young people who you've brought together or are bringing together. And then you can also engage with those parents of those young people to find out, what might be some ways to encourage or stepping in. But sometimes we also have to encourage kids to step back to allow the opportunity for those who are really quiet. So it's certainly a delicate balance. And as you get to know that team, and as they form that relationship around the challenge, and they have a goal, and they have established norms for how they want to work as a team, I think those things will help to set some success for the group. So I hope that helps answer that question. And feel free to add more strategies that that you have used as experienced coaches too.
And Kelly's had a lot of experience with chatting with coaches. So Kelly, would you have anything to add to any of these comments? Oh.
I see that now. The only thing I would be is if you're working with those kids and it's a situation where those quieter kids aren't having a chance to talk because the talkative ones are talking over them, maybe find a way to make it so, maybe it's a talking stick or something that if somebody's holding an object, it's their turn to talk and everyone else needs to remain quiet while they share their ideas. And you can pass that around so everyone gets an equal opportunity to share that.
Any other questions or comments while we're on this topic? Yes, good advice. Lindsay says watching examples of chain reactions might help to initially start brainstorming. And that is something, and I think Mike kind of indicated it too, or he provided a strategy. You can get stuck, or the teams can get stuck in brainstorming forever. So that's part of our job as a facilitator, is helping them come to a consensus in a timely fashion. So, and pointing out, we've got limited time, so we've got to make a decision here and move forward. All right. So again, stop us or keep putting things in chat if you have questions. But we also want to go over a few other kind of basics. And if you look in the rubric, the evaluations, the judging components that are on our website, you'll see references to, does the team understand the engineering design process? So we've got some resources in there for you as coaches. But what we've defined engineering design as is engineering is that defining that human problem, and it's all geared towards creating a solution. And then design is the plan that you use to create that solution and come up with a solution to your problem. So we work off of this engineering design process, and in truth, you can use there's a ton of different engineering design processes out there. but they all have these elements in there. And so the key for this is a problem solving process, and we want kids to understand the importance of going through a process versus, and so sometimes we do this as an exercise of just starting to build without having a plan and then reflecting on, well, how would that have been differently, and doing it over. So here's one model or framework that you can guide kids through as they're solving the problems in building their machine. And that is simply starting with really understanding the problem and understanding also what your limitations or constraints are. Having then the next step is imagine. So thinking about the brainstorming and picking one of those ideas. And of course, in a Rube Goldberg machine, you've got at least 10 steps that you're going through this, but this could be used to create your theme as well. Then you create your plan and start to create it and then test it. And I'm sure one of the questions, the favorite question of judges, or at least when I've been judging, is asking a team, so did your design work on your first time or your second time? And it helps kids understand that things don't work right on the first time, but by sticking with it, that's going through the engineering design process and you're creating that solution. So having kids understand this will help them explain to judges when they're showcasing their machine of how they created their machine. So the showcase experience, there's several different options that you have. If you have a county fair, we encourage you to show at the county fair. So enter your machine at the county fair, even if it's not done, because this will give you the opportunity to for your team to be in front of a judge, to understand how to work as a team to answer questions to the judge, and also get some hints of where they need to improve. So if you have the opportunity to showcase at a county fair, it's a good experience for your team. Then we have the state in-person showcase experience, and it's Monday, August 7th at St. Cloud State University. And as part of this event, there was time for teams to come and set up, and we'll be getting the schedule out later. But the first thing we have to do is teams to showcase with each other, because it provides teams an opportunity to hear from and learn from each other. And when we did used to do this event at the state fair, that was one of the comments that we got from teams, because of the limitations of state fair, is they didn't get to see each other's machines. So this was a really nice bonus or addition when we moved out to St. Cloud State University, is that teams could see each other's machines. Then of course the conference judging, and we have 3 or 4 conference judges as part of our state event. We have somebody from youth development. Often it's one of our STEM team members. Then we will reach out to industries and business folks to have them, and then sometimes engineering students, so that our team members, our youth, are getting that experience of talking to engineers and being evaluated by engineers and having a conversation with an engineer. And as part of that, we have a variety of different awards. We do judge on the Danish system in 4-H, which is a worthy, good, and excellent, which is teams are not judged against each other, but they're judged against a standard. So that judging evaluation sheet that we have is the standard that we're using, or that judges are using to evaluate young people. This year at the state event too, prior to COVID, we had a ton of businesses that would provide hands-on activities, so that when teams weren't showcasing, they had something to go and do. Last year, we reduced that coming out of COVID, just not knowing how things were going to work. But with it being our 10-year anniversary, we're hoping to really kick it up and have lots of fun and engaging engineering-related hands-on activities that young people can engage in between showcase opportunities. And we recognize, I'm up here in Crookston, and it's a haul to get to St. Cloud State. So if your team can't make the trip or isn't ready to be there in person, we do have a virtual showcase experience where your team will video their machine, send it in early, and then participate in the conference judging via Zoom with a similar type of judging team with youth development folks, with business or industry folks as well. And
Hey,
then,
Margo.
yes.
I'm sorry. I was just going to share that Mike indicated that their county fair precedes our showcase. And so they're going to do a video option that their machine is represented at the county fair, which I think is a great strategy. And the other piece, as I was just going to indicate, is that there are probably other showcasing opportunities outside of that county fair. So think about your community, and if there are other locations where, having young people have that opportunity to showcase to another community audience, we highly encourage that. So just the county fair and our state showcase are not the only opportunities, and that I know I've had a couple of teams who have showcased with their county stakeholders in the past, or maybe there's some other community event where it would make sense to have them demonstrate and share out the learning in their community.
Yeah,
And that
thanks.
can happen after the state event as well, not just before.
Yeah, your teams put a lot of energy into this, and it takes time, and the truth is they learn some really cool things and they're articulate about what they learn. So help your team show what they've learned. It is really cool. So yeah, public library is a perfect place. Your local, your 4-H federations or councils, or each county has a county extension committee, are great places to showcase additionally. I do want to make clear too, as your team gets busy and time gets away from all of us, if your team doesn't have the full 10 steps, don't think that eliminates you from coming. There's consequences. So there's a penalty. You're not meeting the standard, but it's still a really good learning experience for young people. And we have had teams that come without their machine, without all 10 steps working, and they still have a really good learning experience. So don't think that because you don't have 10 steps or your 2 steps aren't working, that eliminates you for coming. Please do come and participate.
A great opportunity for them to see other teams and their success, and also learn from them as well. And kids talking to kids teaching other kids is really powerful too. So please still come. That's a great advice, Margot.
And Kelly, I'll turn it over to you again.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit before about the team journals and how it's important to start those right away when your team gets going. Also, when they do come to the state event, they will give a presentation about their machine. And that's up to the young people to decide how they want to share that on their team. For some teams, it's a very formal presentation. Others, it's a little bit more relaxed, and whatever works best for you is the best way to do it. The thing we would do encourage, though, is that everyone on that team have a role in that presentation, whether that means the speaking part, maybe they're helping to reset the machine, any role that they feel comfortable in doing. So they will get an opportunity to present to the team in the team to team showcase, where they're sharing with other teams that are there already, and then also a presentation to the judge panel that they interact with. It can be the same presentation for both groups, so don't feel that you have to do more than one. And again, on that, we're going to talk about in the next slide too about there's examples of team journals on our website. So Margaret, if you want to flip to that next slide. Okay. So in addition to support for teams working and meeting, we have many resources for volunteers. First of all, we want to thank you for taking the role of the coach in these teams. It's a big commitment, and we really appreciate you putting the time and energy with these young people. I know sometimes it's a little intimidating when you first step forward thinking, well, I'm not an engineer. I can't teach kids how to be engineers. And absolutely you can. We want you to work with those young people because you're good at it. And we know that you will do a great job with them. So we also have some things in place to help you in your role. These are all on that Engineering Design Challenge website that we had for the Z-Link earlier. Many of these are on our website, but in addition to that, the first one you see listed that we also make phone calls to all of our judges in the summer. I'm the one that makes those calls just to check in with the coaches to see how they're doing. We focus primarily on first-year coaches. We definitely will check in with more experienced coaches as well, just to see how things are going. Maybe if you need some advice or some questions answered, we're here for that. And then on our website, we have resources about the engineering design process. That's the EDP guide that's listed there. We have several pieces of curriculum there that can help teach concepts about simple machines and transfer of energy that you can reference there. Again, journal examples, and then the judging rubric to kind of help your team prepare for that state showcase coming up. We are developing a meeting guide That's probably a real common question we get is, well, how do I start with my team? Where do we start? How do we get going? We are still working on that. I'm not sure that we'll have it done completely by the end of this year, but we will have at least a good start to help you get started. If you have suggestions about what else should be in that, we'd be happy to have you share that with us so we can include it too as well. And the next slide, I think we're kind of wrapped up here. So before we wrap up for tonight, what other questions do you have? Or maybe some experienced coaches, any little nuggets of advice you can offer for our brand new coaches? You can unmute or put it in the chat.
Or if there's things you're unsure of, ask or say, I'm confused about this, because that'll help. I'm sure you're not the only one that's confused. So we make improvements every year, and sometimes we hit the mark, and sometimes we still keep making, sometimes we use the engineering design process to keep making improvements.
Margaret, we didn't talk about the new registration process for teams in that state event. Do you want to maybe talk about that real quickly?
Yeah, and it's hard to figure. I don't want to muddy the water too much, but for those of you that have been coaches before, it was a even more confusing, but it was a two-step process of you needed to register in 4-H online and then register for the state event. We have eliminated the step of registering interest in Engineering Design Challenge, and now what we're asking is just if you're coming to the state event, register for the state event. And so if that's still confusing, or if you have questions about that, please ask, because this honestly has been this is something we've been struggling with for a while. When we get it right, it's probably time to move on. So please help us keep not to move on, but help us get this process right by asking questions if you have them. And Mike has some advice. We found it easier to start at the last step and work our way forward. We used a 4x6 board to put everything on and want to make sure we have enough room to fit all the steps. The board made it very easy to transport and set up. That is a piece of advice that I think experienced coaches will tell you. The coaches that we, or teams that we do see come year after year, have a frame and they build within that frame. And one of the keys is you're going to have to, wherever you build, you have to move it to your showcase experience. So if you can provide a stable platform to move it with, that just solves a problem, and figuring out how you're going to move it as well. So it can't be bigger than a 6x6. So as Mike, I think what Mike is saying is if you build it a little shorter, you know, you're within the boundaries.
The other piece of advice I tell coaches is figure out the vehicle that you're going to transport it in and measure those dimensions. And even though the maximum size is 6 foot by 6 foot by 6 foot, maybe your van or your SUV has a smaller dimensions than that. So start there first.
Yes, great, Kelly. Other questions?
It doesn't have to be 6 foot by 6 foot. You know, we've seen some machines that are pretty small too. So don't feel like bigger is better in this case.
Yep. Great question. So with the frame, so yeah, there's some woodworking involved. So that's a great skill for young people to learn, but sometimes they're not ready there yet. So I think Kelly and Becky, you speak to this too. Kind of my rule of thumb is a parent shouldn't be doing it on their own. Like kids need to be there as part of the process. If they don't have that woodworking skill and there's concerns and danger, then yeah, a parent steps in and can do that, but it's not a parent building it in isolation.
It doesn't have to be in a framework either. That's just some of the teams have done that in the past. You can see in these pictures here that there's several of them that are not on framework.
You know, and if you know, the woodworking is an issue, because I would not tackle woodworking. PVC, I can handle PVC pipe. So PVC pipe might be an opportunity too. And I've seen teams take PVC pipe and pegboard and zip ties and create their frame out of using that as a framework. Yeah, in the end, we're about keeping young people safe. We want to create a great learning environment, but ultimately that the base of that is keeping kids safe. Yeah, yes, it is an opportunity for them to learn woodworking, even though they might not have known they were interested, or some type of building skill. So yes, great comment, Joanne.
Don't forget safety glasses when you are helping them learn how to use those tools too.
I know it was identified earlier in the chat about sort of like testing, like you can't, running those steps, like testing the different steps. And one of the things that I have seen over the years is that depending on the location of showcasing, that might be different than where the practice for setting up those steps has taken place. So there might be some, particular attention paid to, like, is it, how would this do if there was a little bit of a breeze on a day, or if like today it's really warm, or the humidity levels are different. And so how does that interaction of what is happening in the environment influence in either a positive or a negative way? Because I know when we were at the state fair for showcasing, we had, the big garage doors that were open, and there would often be like a breeze coming in. And sometimes we've had that at St. Cloud State too. So thinking about that as the process is unfolding, because the weather we have in May when we get started to what it might look like in August could be very different. So I think it's maybe something to pay attention to, or to spark an idea with the kids to think about. So that's just one thing I've seen over the course of time, is how that can be frustrating for some if it's not quite what they were expecting when they get in that showcase environment.
We have had the question in the past about what the gym floor is like in the field house at St. Cloud State. So they're thinking about that, not building it on carpet. It is kind of a rubberized gym floor surface, if that makes a difference to you and your team.
No matter how much planning and perfection you get, inevitably a step might fail, and that's okay. So it happens.
Some teams have also brought like an emergency repair kit with them. So when they do get to St. Cloud and they realize that, oh, something happened during transportation, a hammer or a screwdriver or zip ties or that type of thing might come in handy. So bring those with you.
Go ahead, Kelly.
No, I was going to say it's also good to create a checklist of all the pieces that are needed. And right before you put your machine into the vehicle to transport it, you just go through that checklist and make sure you have all your tennis balls and all your Matchbox cars and the number of dominoes or Legos you need for your machine.
As you say that, it reminds me too, I see a lot of teams assign kids steps so that when you get there and set everything up, they know exactly where things should be for their steps. So that type of precision helps to create that environment for success as well. But whatever works for your team, I'm just saying I've seen many teams do that. And it maybe happens naturally, but something to keep in mind. Mike, bring chairs to sit on. We found a few open minutes and ordered pizza for lunch. A few extra for parents there are nice. Yes. Yeah. In the field house, we don't have. There's a few chairs, but not a lot. So yes, we should add that to the packing list or suggestion for coaches. Thank you, Mike.
And remember to bring your chairs home. We had a couple left behind last year.
Well, as we're wrapping up, as Kelly and I'll echo it for Becky and I, thank you for putting forth this effort for young people. It's hard, but it's really cool to see young people have that resilience and grit to finish off a task. And that happens because you are there as a facilitator to talk them through it, to let them know that failure is where we learn, and life goes on even when things don't work the way they should. And I have. If you want to hear them sometime, I can tell you some stories. I was in the 4-H program in New York, and there are suicides as part of the Cornell campus. And one of the things that we talked about in 4-H was this support that we give young people when they fail helps them to, when they get to these hard challenges and they're away from home, they have the coping skills. And so failure isn't a bad thing when you've got an adult there, that caring adult such as all of you, to help young people navigate that failure and come out realizing it wasn't the end of the world, and they gained skills and they grew from it. Becky and Kelly, any last words from you? And again, if you have questions, please step up and ask.
My only advice is to take a step back and watch these kids and how powerful they are as they learn how engineering works. It really is fun to watch.
Yeah, I would echo that. Like, it's incredible to see what ideas and how they bring those ideas into the machine design. And even hearing about that, I've often been in that role of a judge, and to hear, like, I really wanted to have this be a step, but we just could not get it to work, and having to, move past that. It's a really good learning opportunity on that problem solving and team building. And I just think it's really great that all of you are here supporting that opportunity for youth in your community. And if you encounter any questions or concerns or challenges, or you need other resources that are not available, please don't hesitate to reach out. As we have alluded to, we are working on other resources, and we don't know entirely everything that is maybe needed. So if you find you need something that we haven't even considered, we want to hear about it. So thank you for your time tonight.
And I think if we have no other questions, that's all we have for tonight. But again, if you have questions or things you're confused about, we want to hear about it.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, everybody.